I would imagine that as a consequence of you pulling forward this way, you're going to get some lateral movement as well. Is it possible after puberty that using your thumbs, using your opposable digits, you can pull your face apart and make it appear more attractive to the opposite sex and any other individual out there? It turns out you can. Now, I will add a small caveat here. I have not personally practiced this of yet. However, there is sufficient evidence out there to suggest that this kind of technique mimics an orthotropic technique or tool used to expand the palate and therefore increase the prominence of the maxilla and the jawbone. Okay, so let me introduce you to the self-aware monkey. Now, this was posted 2 years ago and it shows 14.5 months of growth through 9 months of face pulling. And you can see here on the left-hand side, this self-aware monkey has, not a poor facial structure by any stretch of the imagination. He's not a mouth breather. This area of the jaw isn't underdeveloped, but comparatively to face pulling, you can see a greater prominence here of the jawbone. You can even see the chin here coming a bit further forward and downwards. I would even say that the structures in the forehead as well are coming a little bit. There's definitely increased bone growth here, which is substantial and significant because this individual looks like he's certainly over the age of puberty, where the sutures of your skull have, as science suggests, fused together. So what we're going to do is, I believe he's dropped his routine down below. We'll go through it and I'll show you what thumb pulling or face pulling is. And I've got a couple other before and afters and some interesting photos of how the palate expands through MSE. So we'll come down here as this individual has asked for it. Self-aware monkey has obliged. I hook my thumbs against my hard palate and I pull hard. I mean really hard for about 2 to 3 minutes twice a day. To save your thumb skin, put folded tissue or fabric between the thumbs and the teeth. And to save your vertebrae and neck ligaments, lean your neck back against the wall or the edge of a shelf so you can catch the force, and it doesn't have to be catched by your own spine. Okay, so what on earth does this look like? Now, I'll first show you, through my last visit to some of my orthodontists, I've got a mold of my teeth here. And what's going to be concerning us is the top half, right? So the palate is under here, the roof of your mouth, right? What he's doing, he's inserting both of his thumbs inside the mouth up against the palate, and he's pulling the palate apart. And what this may look like, I'll give a live demonstration here, is I'm not going to be able to speak here. This is going to be remarkable. And then pulling against the sutures that run down the middle of the cranium apart. And what is interesting to note here is this has substantial effects because this individual is certainly past puberty, and there is a palpable difference in his cranial facial structure. We'll go down here, and he's saying that he isn't even fully into his process, but he does remark that the younger you are, the more effective this is going to be. As I've said and alluded to, because the sutures haven't yet fused together, you're going to see more noticeable and faster differences if you are watching this and you are between the ages of, let's say, 16 to 20 years old. Okay? See what else is being said here. It's a high chance that you get a high palate. Be careful and good luck. Has your palate become wider? Maybe a stupid question, but in what direction do you need to pull? Is there a video somewhere? I'm giving you the video of how to do it. No video. Looks pretty dumb. It does look pretty dumb. He hasn't measured his palate. He only pulls forward and inevitably pushing to the side to some degree. So it's important to remember here that when you're pushing against his palate, if you see from a kind of, oh, that's the bottom teeth there. If you can see from a, I mean, it's not really a bird's eye view, it's more of a slug's eye view here, that my palate isn't particularly wide, but he's pulling, you know, he's pulling more forward. I would imagine that as a consequence of you pulling forward this way, you're going to get some lateral movement as well. And like he says here, this would only be a bonus if he does this. Now, I would worry here that it might not be safe, but he has also asked and answered, pardon me, a similar question here. Face pulling with constant small forces is even done by professionals. So we'll get onto the tool in just a moment, which mimics the same effect of this. It should be quite safe. Short, strong forces aren't observed yet. Yes, it could be dangerous, but as long as you don't have any pain, or he doesn't have any pain, he keeps doing it, it's worth the risk for him. So, you know, he's mentioning there that, of course, this hasn't been observed, rightly said. There's no evidence to suggest yet, but he's noticing some significant changes and results in his particular method. And I would be continuing to do what he's doing if he's getting the results that he's getting here. So what is this at the consequence really? So I've got a couple bits and pieces here. This first individual, you can see here immediately the narrowness of this palate comparatively to afterwards. An appliance is placed on the palate and it pushes and forces the teeth laterally. And you can see what a substantial difference this makes in the structures of the face. Now, I believe this tool, I can't remember the tool's name. Maybe it's coming up on my next slides here. But it's similar to that of a retainer, by which there's a screw in the top of the palate. And every time you go back to your orthodontist or your dental expert, he or she will wind the screw and it starts to push again a couple of millimeters laterally. He'll hold it there. You'll go back home. Again, it's going to be very, very painful, but over time, that force is going to move the teeth. And this is, you know, remarkable difference in the face here. You can see the droopiness of the, you know, the chin, and especially the lower jaw as well, as it kind of has this hang dog mouth breather, atypical mouth breather look. And then the difference here is the jaw comes up and the jaw comes forward as well. And even some growth, I would say, in the cheeks as well. And even in the nose. I think the nose is drooping as a consequence of the lack of structure there. And it's coming back up because the palate is wider, she's got more room to breathe, and that jaw is coming back up underneath the maxilla. We've got another one here that shows kind of similar. You can see the kind of indentations of the machine of the tool, that it sits above the palate and it starts to expand the dental arch looking like St. Louis over here from comparatively when this individual started here. Any aesthetic changes on the face? Yes, my cheekbones are noticeably wider. Not related to MSE directly, but my face has more definition now since I learned how to swallow correctly. And we're talking like maybe only a month or two of doing it properly. My lower third was puffier before. I used to think I had a pretty wide lower jaw, but really all it was just a disproportionately narrow mid-face. Hopefully I can achieve some forward growth now, dramatic restoring of the face laterally. It's amazing. I have no idea what reference that is to. I probably look a little unbalanced, but I'd say I'd take that possibility and being able to breathe better. I think also what's really remarkable is the physiological benefits that you get beyond the, what would you say, aesthetic ones. There is a noticeable difference in your ability to breathe. Now, again, I don't think my palate is particularly narrow, but I do have some, I wouldn't say trouble breathing when I'm sleeping, but it's certainly not optimal. And sometimes I use nose strips, which kind of hold the nasal passages open a little bit wider. And I typically sleep better that day. But here's what this little GIF here shows what happens to the skull when there is lateral and forward pressure placed on the palate, which is essentially what mewing does. So I know it's going pretty quickly here, but you can see here, undeveloped, developed, underdeveloped, developed. You can see the cheekbones. Let's go through this all together. The cheekbones pick up and they start to widen and they start to get denser as well, okay? And then you can see here the maxilla, real dramatic differences here in the maxilla as the forward growth of the face comes up. Less crowding of the teeth as there's more space there. And you can see, look, as I mentioned before, the difference in being able to breathe is going to be substantial. And you can see the jaw coming forward as well. And there's certainly more definition there. And this is from a real presentation, by the way, guys. All of this is from orthotropics, pardon me, if you want to do your own research yourself. But these are some of the top picks in my personal opinion by going through these. And this is from a presentation. It's quite a long presentation. It's a fascinating presentation. You can have a little look yourself. But this is real. This isn't an animation. This is from a real individual who had that tool placed in the palate and expands the palate. And this is the differences in the structures of the face. And then you've got one last one here again, 8 months palate expansion purely just to mewing. So if you don't want to get your thumbs in there and start prying your palate apart, just remember to keep that back third of the tongue up hard against the palate. You can use some sessions of hard mewing as well, which would be 2 to 3 minutes of just forcing that tongue up as hard as you can against the palate, which again is going to have the same effect of widening it even larger. And you can see less crowding. This is on the right hand side, less crowding of the teeth, and certainly a much bigger increase in the palate. And that's only due to 8 months of consistent mewing. This individual is 23, so even after puberty, they are seeing changes in their palate and in their facial structure as a consequence of that. It's really interesting to note that the more and more you go into this kind of area where there's opportunity for a lot of self-correction, meaning, you don't always need to go to the dentist and the orthodontist to be able to, let's say, fix a problem like crowding. When you place anything under pressure, you're going to see remarkable differences in the structures of things. I'm just going to bear with me just a moment. So yeah, I just pulled this up from Orthotropics. Really, really interesting picture. How pressure over time changes even the solidest of structures. Keep mewing. So for the individuals who say their mewing is bullshit, it's bro science, look, this is concrete, right? This is concrete. And you can see water. And these puddles, these are very shallow puddles, so you can't imagine there's a lot of weight behind the pressure there, but consistent pressure warps gravel. But you can see it's warping the structure of gravel. What do you think will happen if you consistently place tongue pressure up on the palate, your thumbs up against the palate, you have a device up against the palate, you will see a warping in the structure. So if you place anything under pressure for long enough periods of time, you're going to see differences in structure. Another classic one is there are some tribes in Africa that place the rings around the necks and the neck starts to elongate. Now you would never think, a neck can't be 3, 4, 5 inches tall. But if you've got, rings around your neck, if you've got pressure forcing you in one direction, the body adapts to that kind of pressure. So that's the sentiment in which it proceeds. The body adapts. The body adapts. If you put it in difficult and minor stressful environments, it will adapt to deal with that stress. It will change. And here you can see the gravel changing, the African tribes' necks changing, and you can see here, the face changing as well due to that pressure, the skull changing due to that kind of pressure. You can even remark on the inner aspects of the skull as well, pushing the eyes up higher to get that classic hunter eye that so many men are looking to add to their aesthetic. So gentlemen, these are not theories today. These are cold, hard facts. I will be experimenting with a little bit of face pulling and thumb pulling in my time, and perhaps I'll do some before and after pictures. I think the challenge with this is once you know it can happen, is are you consistent with it? So I've been doing it when I'm in the shower, when I'm washing. It doesn't take long to, for 2-3 minutes to put your thumbs up, push the palate apart. There's another one when you can just put just the thumb up. So I'll just bring it here. You can just take the thumb and you can just press it against the palate like that. That's another way of, again, because that's where your tongue is sitting up against the palate and you're just pushing back. which again is an easy fix in the environment where you're taking a shower. But just being consistent with it, I think that's going to be the challenge for myself and anybody who is looking to add this into their practice. I would be really interested if there are individuals between the ages of maybe 16 and 20 watching this video, what you can achieve just by being consistent, by placing more pressure up on the palate, widening the space in the mouth, developing the jaw, developing the maxilla, and the cheekbones and some of the more aesthetic structures of the face. But yeah, subscribe and speak soon, gents.